What makes for a great Scream film? They've always been whodunits full of meta-commentary on the horror genre, or oftentimes more specifically, the slasher subgenre of horror. Scream 6 is no exception to those particular points, and it's impressive that it's held steady for this long in quality across this many films, as well as through the passing of the torch when the original director of the Scream series, Wes Craven, passed away. Craven directed the first 4 films, after which there was an 11-year hiatus before another feature film was released. If Scream 5, or 5 Cream as some call it, was the requel that answered the question of whether or not a new horror director or directors could awaken the Scream series from hibernation, Scream 6 is everything that worked well about Scream 5, with an added pressure from putting one's foot on the gas. It's a roller coaster, a steamroller, an adrenaline-fueled romp that is terrific fun for Scream fans to watch, though I do have 1 or 2 issues or nitpicks with it. Overall, this was one of the films that made me feel like finally the 2023 cinematic lineup has been jump-started. In Scream 5, there were a number of parallels, references, and homages to the original Scream film, and now with Scream 6, what became abundantly clear after watching and rewatching this film back-to-back to ensure that I had what I needed in my notes to write a review of it, is that Scream 6 simultaneously feels like a familiar homage to Scream 2, but also a fresh take on certain elements of that particular story. Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, and I'm about to talk about Scream 6 with spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go see the film at your local cinema, and then you can circle back around to this video afterwards.
Don't we wish they would just die? Yes! Oh, no, we don't.
Scream 2 saw our final girl protagonist, Sidney Prescott, leaving the quaint high school setting in Woodsboro to attend university elsewhere. And Scream 6 sees our new protagonist, Sam Carpenter, leaving the quaint high school setting in Woodsboro to look after her sister Tara, who is attending university elsewhere, but more specifically in New York City. As is customary, you cannot have a Scream film without an opening kill sequence. The one for Scream 2 took place in a movie theater, whereas Scream 6 has its closing sequence in a movie theater. The opening kill for Scream 6 is largely focused on Samara Weaving. She is a welcome addition to this lineup since she was the final girl of Radio Silence's hit horror film before Scream 5, titled Ready or Not. Now, I will admit that when Samara was announced for the cast, I was really hoping that she would have a Ghostface reveal because I loved the idea of seeing her do a villain monologue. But the upside of her being in the opening is that we are treated to the iconic Samara scream. We get an introduction to some essential meta-commentary of horror, of slashers, and of course, voiceover work from Roger L. Jackson. But this opening is also where we get the sense that this Scream film is going to be different from the others. When the phone call starts, it's not Roger L. Jackson. As someone who has spent the last couple of days catching up on Servant, I recognized Tony's voice right away, and then when he removed his mask and we actually saw his face, I was shocked. Because we never see who's under the Ghostface mask until the end of the movie. And for him to go from killing Samara to having a casual run-in with Tara, my mind was spinning. I didn't know if we were about to completely flip the Scream universe on its head by following the Ghostface killer through their POV of terrorizing the main group. But after a bit, it became clear that he was actually going to be another one of the opening kill victims. Still, a terrific extended sequence of establishing the film's delicate balance of being both a fresh and familiar reimagining of Scream 2. When meeting a new ensemble of characters in any whodunit, Scream or otherwise, I tend to start things off in a place of everyone being a suspect. New people in the friend group, suspects. Sam's got a therapist, suspect. Though I did actually remove the therapist from my suspect list when he started pulling away from her after she confided in him the truth about her darker side. If he was Ghostface, he would have presumably been fanning those flames instead of trying to run away from them. One of the improvements of Scream 6 compared to Scream 5 is how much more depth there is for the character material and the relationships these characters have with one another. The friend group in Scream 5 barely felt like they were friends with each other, but in Scream 6, we've got Sam and Tara unpacking the layers of their differing reactions to the traumatic dramatic events of Scream 5. We've got a blossoming romance between Tara and Chad. We've got Sam exploring something that's both salacious and romantic with her neighbor Danny. Come to think of it, almost everyone is getting some in this movie. Except for Ethan. Mindy's got a new girlfriend, Gail's got a new boyfriend, Quinn is apparently getting some from any and every boy she's interested in, which I don't know how she has time for all of that considering everything else she has going on in this story, but good for her for having an extremely strong ability to multitask. Strong character material has always been in the building blocks of the Scream film series. It was always a story that knew the importance of getting the audience emotionally invested in the main characters because it not only gives them and the story more dimension overall, but it also increases the potency of the kills. If you care about the characters, you will buy into the fear and the threat of danger when they're getting chased down and attacked by Ghostface more than you would if you didn't care about them at all. Even with the new characters, I couldn't help but start to form some attachments to them. I thought that Danny was a really sweet love interest, and even though I could tell that he's supposed to be a suspect because they always drive home the point of how important it is for the audience to be suspicious of the love interest, the more I saw of him, the more he was winning me over. When he told Sam to not trust anyone, including him, I loved that. But also when they were all on the subway together and a Ghostface was approaching their group, he moved up to stand in front of Sam. That was when I knew I was hooked. I knew I should not be getting attached because everyone is a suspect, but by that point in the film's runtime, I had already locked in my guess for Ghostface's identity, and it wasn't him. So I was free to bask in the what a man of it all. One other thing I loved that I don't know where else to put in the sections of this video that I have chosen to organize it by, they played two shorts, Blow the Whistle, and not only did they license this song for the soundtrack, they played it for a lengthy duration, and I so appreciate that because hearing that song, it makes me feel like an adolescent. I was singing along and then I had to remind myself that I needed to focus. I had my notepad and pen. I needed to be paying attention, looking for clues, assessing suspects, and all of that. Another major strength of Scream 6 were the kills, but more than that, it was the chasing. I'm of the belief, and I've heard others note, how Scream 5 would have benefited from putting in more chasing to build up to its kills. Whether it was to remedy those criticisms or simply because looser restrictions for filming and an increased budget gave them more freedom and resources to be ambitious and grandiose in their kill sequence designs, the final result in Scream 6 speaks for itself. The pacing I found to be excellent of these sequences. It really did feel like a roller coaster that was complete with the calmer moments before the giant drops and loops, but no matter what, we were always on a ride. The methodology of people being attacked and not surviving those attacks also felt incredibly fresh. Although yes, Ghostface's signature weapon is a knife, we see things like Ghostface using a shotgun simply because that was what is available to him. We see Ghostface wrestle with a ladder to make sure that someone falls off of it. Ghostface isn't abandoning the lore or the signature. Ghostface is merely more focused than ever on fulfilling their objective, which is to kill people. Anything that will achieve that end result is an acceptable option. It's difficult for me to pull just one or two kill sequences as my favorites or as the best of the film. I think the overall amalgamation of the general variety, quantity, the increased amount of chasing, and the generally high octane pace of the kill sequences are what make such a strong impression from this film. Despite there being a great many things I enjoy about Scream 6, I did have a couple of issues with it. Now, the main issue I had was that they really went out of their way to emphasize, by way of Mindy's explain the rules monologue, that in a franchise, no one is safe. Legacy characters, the core four, they are not supposed to be safe. I was fully expecting at least one of those people to not survive this particular Ghostface. Given what happened to Dewey in Scream 5, I had every bit of confidence in this creative team to make the difficult decision of picking somebody off in this movie that would be beloved by the audience. We saw some truly intense and even at times downright gruesome attacks on characters like Mindy, Chad, Gail, and Kirby. Even the final stab to the gut that Tara experiences before she hands handles that particular Ghostface, that was a lot to watch. Yet somehow not a single one of these characters was killed off. Ultimately, that did bring the movie down for me a little bit. I was leaning towards giving it a 4.5 when I was going to log it on Letterboxd, but when I actually thought about the material, this issue was simply too glaring for me to ignore. Given my point I previously made about how the strong character material of the Scream films is really important and how it ups the dramatic and emotional stakes for the viewer to really feel the weight of these characters being in danger, refusing to follow through on killing all of those characters brings down the entire back half of the movie. All of that violence and mayhem, but none of our heroes die? No.
I saw that going differently in my mind.
Now, I'm not overly fixated on which one it would have been. I think that whichever one would have made the most sense for the story that the filmmakers were trying to tell, and perhaps also factoring in whatever larger plans they have for a Scream 7, choose accordingly. But somebody needs to go. The plot armor in this movie was thicker than Payakon's head. Truly, strong enough to headbutt an exploding missile into a military ship. Now, if I were to choose someone to go, purely based on my emotions as opposed to any other story logistics that I would not be able to speak on, since I'm not in these meetings with radio silence about what they're trying to do in the larger cinematic narrative, I would have chosen Kirby because she's a cop. And not just a cop, she's a Fed. That's the fastest way to make me root for a character's downfall. Make them a cop. The fact that Kirby is a character Scream fans have been wanting to see make a return, and they opted to tarnish that, oh, she's back, by trying to do a being a cop is girl boss actually reveal, I hated that. If I were to list every major human rights violation of the FBI as evidentiary support of why this reveal put me off, this review would be 3 weeks long. But I'm not going to leave this part of my review without offering one example. The Black Panthers established a free breakfast program for school children in the 1960s. The head of the FBI at the time, J. Edgar Hoover, called the program potentially the greatest threat to efforts by authorities to neutralize the Black Panther Party and destroy what it stands for, and gave carte blanche to law enforcement to destroy it. The results were swift and devastating. FBI agents went door to door in cities like Richmond, Virginia, telling parents that Black Panther Party members would teach their children racism. In San Francisco, writes historian Franziska Meister, parents were told the food was infected with venereal disease. Sites in Oakland and Baltimore were raided by officers who harassed Black Panther Party members in front of terrified children, and participating children were photographed by Chicago police. The night before the first breakfast program in Chicago was supposed to open, a female Panther told historian Nick Hanen, the Chicago police broke into the church and mashed up all the food and urinated on it. I know that Dewey, for example, has always been a cop, but he's such a lovable, almost bumbling fool at times that his status as law enforcement feels like it exists more so in the background. And also, he's dead now, so even if you do think the emotional attachment the material encourages towards his character constitutes propaganda, the situation has already been handled. But anyway, propaganda aside, in Scream 7, I hope they not only circle back to following through and knocking off one of the legacy and or core 4. Do 2 of them, please, to catch up, since you clearly missed somebody on this one. The only other critique I had is more of a nitpick than anything and is better suited to fit into my next section, which is about the reveals, most of which I did see coming as I was watching it. If you watched my review of Scream 5, then you will already know that I figured out the identity of Ghostface in that film before it was revealed. The very first time we see those two characters meet, I felt it in my gut that they were acting off. I did not believe the image they were trying to project, and from there it was fairly simple to spot a lot of the other clues once I was paying attention to both of those characters with that theory in mind. Now in Scream 6, I was about a third or midway through the runtime when I was ultimately able to lock in my guess for the identity of Ghostface and the motive. And here is how I got there. When Ghostface appears in Sam's apartment and he's shown to be leering over Quinn, but he doesn't outright attack her, I went, no, that's suspicious. I think she's in on it. When they tried to do the reveal of her having been killed by Ghostface, but you didn't actually see the kill happen, I figured, well, you're obviously faking it. We always see the kills. Now, here is where my nitpick comes in. Danny was watching this happen from across the way through the windows. He saw Ghostface leering over her, and that was what first alerted him to the fact that Sam, Tara, and everyone else in that apartment was in danger. How exactly were they able to fake a kill without him seeing it? You had to get an entire prosthetic onto your neck, all that fake blood on you, the victim, and all over the room, but he somehow didn't see any of it, even though he took a picture of her being attacked by Ghostface to send to the Core 4. The math is not mathing, my friend. But anyway, that was where I was locking in Quinn as a Ghostface, and then the morning after, when Detective Bailey comes and he's being all emotional about the death of his daughter, he said to Sam and Tara, "You f with my family, you die." And I immediately went, well, that's clearly a motive. That line and the line delivery, it just screamed, here is my motive. So then I went, Detective Bailey and Quinn are a father-daughter Ghostface team, and the motive is that Richie is their son and brother. They kept mentioning this dead brother, this dead son, and the profound impact of that loss on them. So I knew they were doing it for Richie. And to be clear, even though it's not as entertaining of a motive as what we saw in Scream 5, the fact that it was just good old-fashioned familial revenge worked very well for me because it was yet another Scream 2 reference. In that film, we had Mrs. Loomis wanting to get revenge for Billy, and these two wanted to get revenge for Richie. A few other details that further strengthened my resolve on my hypothesis was that the knives from that apartment disappeared. Quinn would know how to hide them or to tell another Ghostface where to find them and possibly also where to hide them within the apartment. When they did the reveal of the lair with all the Ghostface memorabilia, I also had to think, Dermot Mulroney is playing a cop. He has access to evidence from cases. That's where all this stuff came from. Now, if you've seen the film and you also follow me on Letterboxd, then you already know that I said that there was one detail about the Ghostface reveal that I did not guess beforehand. The detail I was referring to was the fact that there is a third Ghostface killer. Now, I will clearly explain why I did not guess this. Before I do that, though, I wanted to note how it was a really fun detail to have Gail getting punched again for being a scummy, invasive reporter. But more than that, her dodging Sam's punch only to end up getting hit by Tara worked as a nice bit of foreshadowing that there's one more person to account for than you're used to dealing with. The first reason I didn't figure out that there were 3 killers is because there has never been a triple Ghostface. Ghostface has almost always been 2 killers. Scream 3 had 1 killer. And I really do hope that at some point we get another Scream film with a singular Ghostface. But the other reason I did not clock this reveal before it was revealed is because I am the most inordinate Avatar The Way of Water fan that I personally know. Jack Champion being in this cast had me thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to watch this little guy get sliced and diced. I have been chomping at the bits to do a video dedicated specifically to Spider, that is Jack Champion's character, defending him as if he's my own family, but I have to wait till at least March 28th to be able to fully start working on that video because I need to use footage from the film to support my points. It's quite funny how going into watching Scream 5, it was extremely easy for me to immediately clock Jack Quaid as a killer, even though I watched The Boys very closely. I've made several videos about that show, and he's presented as a mostly good guy on that series. He always has the best intentions, but I don't know, I guess it's just very clear that I do not care about Huey Campbell the way that I care about Spider. And you know what the difference probably is, if I'm really trying to unpack this? Eric Kripke cannot follow through on great romance to save his life, as evidenced by him shoving Huey and Annie's incessant whining and circular arguments in my face over all these seasons, and all the while he has the gall to act like kimchi shippers are wrong for seeing Frenchie and Kimiko as the real power couple and romantic love story of that show. I beg your pardon. Conversely, James Cameron has been the undisputed highest grossing romance director in all of Hollywood for almost 40 years now. Terminator, that's a romance movie. Titanic, obviously a romance. both Avatar films completely overflowing with romance. So I see Jack Champion and my brain just starts floating on a cloud of love, and I trust him. That part where he told Sam that he had 3 tissues to offer her when that dirty rat threw a drink on her. I just wanted to put Ethan in my pocket and take him to a mall to buy him some new shoes. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm losing my edge on the very fun game of solving whodunits in movies, but I'm only human. I cannot help but get swept up in the magic of Pandora. That movie has had me in a headlock for the last 3 months. Overall, though, Scream 6 was a worthy predecessor to the successful requel, Scream 5, as well as the larger catalog of Scream films. It impressively balanced its execution of being a fresh and familiar homage to Scream 2. If Scream 7 follows suit, I am far more excited given how Scream 3 is such a divisive film in the Scream series. Now, the horror fans that I watch on YouTube all love Scream 3, but I know that there are other horror fans who do not care for that film as much. I will reiterate that I would love to see another Scream film with a singular Ghostface, though I do not require that to be something that happens specifically in Scream 7. The stage is definitely set for some truly impactful, emotional devastation whenever the creative team womans up and knocks off another legacy character or someone from the core 4.
Death to all of them.
I'm probably most curious about whether or not the next installment will stay in New York City or if they will have relocated to another city because of the trauma that just happened. For the time being, those are some of my main thoughts on Scream 6. Let me know what you thought of this latest Scream film, and stay tuned for my inevitable video about Spider, because I have been telling a lot of people offline that this is one of the videos I really want to make because I have so many things to say on the matter. Until then, though, see you in my next video. Bye.